So, here we are again. Well, after that, after the Coppa Force reaction video I put up, a few days later, the FTC put up blog, a blog post on their website detailing a bit more of what they're, expecting, I guess, or on who they're gonna target with their COPA rule, and well, I took like a solid 3 days just like reading that whole thing and trying to understand it and how it pertains to me in particular. And based on that, it's a I'm not I'm being cautiously optimistic, but it seems like I might be able to get back into YouTubing. Now, before you get your hopes up, I'm gonna say this right now. It's not 100%, uh, and there's no guarantee that I would still be safe from the COPPA rules because of its government. They make broad statements to ensure their ass is covered. So that being said, I'll leave a link in the description below to that November 22nd blog they put up, and I'll go through I'll essentially let you guys read it, but essentially it comes down to that checklist. Pretty much it goes over the title pretty much says it itself. Is your content directed at children? And pretty much goes over, well, FTC actions against YouTube and Google, COPA recap, and how it applies to owners. And I'll pretty much read this one. So how does COPA apply to channel owners who upload their content to YouTube or other third-party platforms? And they said, they bolded and italicized, COPA applies the same way as if the channel owner owns their own website or app. Essentially, if you upload content to YouTube, they might consider you covered by COPA depending on the nature and content of the information collected, which goes to data collection. If the content is directed at children and the channel owner or someone on their behalf, aka an ad network, collects personal information on the viewer, then they're covered by COPA. So right there, that particular wording, if the content is directed to children and their channel owner collects personal information of the viewer, or rather, if the content is directed to children. I'm a horror player. If you've seen any of my videos, you can very easily see that I don't appeal to any children under 13. And that's not only that, there's also a few other factors that could disqualify me from being covered from COPA. Now, like I said, this is just my take on it and how it applies to me. So, how channel owners can determine if their content is directed to children. Under COPA, there is no one-size-fits-all answers about what makes a site directed to children, but we can offer some guidance. And they state, to be clear, your content isn't directed to children because some kids may see it. But if the kids are under 13, you're covered by COPA and have to honor the requirements. And they put out additional factors the FTC will consider in determining if your content is child-directed. The subject matter. Subject matter would be essentially like your ABCs and sing-alongs versus something like suicide, cannibalism, murder, general things you could find in horror games. Visual content, a good comparison would be, I'm dating myself, but Barney, Clifford the Big Red Dog versus, versus something like the Sausage Party. The Sausage Party. Well, that not exactly Sausage Party. What was it? Yeah, let's just use Sausage Party. The use of animated characters or child-oriented activities and incentive. Once again, your Barneys, your Cliffords, your sing-alongs versus the Sausage Party. The kind of music or other audio content. Once again, any kid sing-along versus like the general audio content you find in a horror game. Age of the models. I'm the model, technically. There is the presence of child celebrities or celebrities who appeal to children. I don't do that. Language or other characteristics of the site, aka, as in the words of Captain America, language. So I'm prone to letting out a few expletives. Let's just call it. I mean, like earlier, you just heard me swear, so that might get me more oriented to kids, but I doubt it. Whether advertising promoted or appear on site is directed to children, yeah, no child-friendly advertisers is gonna place toys ads on a horror video. And competent and reliable empirical evidence about the age of audience, which I have to think YouTube analytics, but kids lie, so it can't be very reliable. They also share some general rules of thumb, which labeled right here. Unless you're affirmatively targeting kids, there are many subject matter categories you do not have to worry about COPA. Like, they list adults as an example: employment, finance, politics, home ownership, home improvement, travel, gun ownership, and all that kind. That's they would not be geared toward kids. Same thing as high schoolers and college students. But if you're essentially, they also put on the other hand, if your contents include traditional child pastime or activities, they could label it child directed. So something like an online dress up game, where they have like the character posing and then you just swap on and off clothing just to see what it looks. Their second rule of thumb is like, just because your video has bright colors or animated characters does not mean you're automatically covered by COPA. And right here, they stated, while many animated shows are directed to kids, the FTC recognizes that there can be animated programs that appeal to everyone, aka Clifford for kids, and like your Simpsons, your Rick and Mortys to the general audience. Thirdly, the complaint in YouTube's case is that most of the family-friendly channel sites have their about sections labeled for kids, children under 13. Many of those same channels also feature animated children's programming or kids playing with toys or participating in child-oriented activities. Yeah, and they give off page 10 to 14 of this link here, which I'll probably put in the description below. And finally, they ask you several questions if you're still on the fence. Have your channel been reviewed on site that evaluates contents for kids? Me? No. Partially because I'm too small for any of the reviews, and I deal in horror. Is your channel or channel like yours mentioned in blogs for parents of young children or in the media about children-directed contents? Once again, I deal in horror. Have you surveyed your users if there's or is there other empirical evidence about your age of audience? If I'm thinking if you're surveying your users through a poll, you don't know your audience, and I know my audience at least to be 18 years old. So, yeah. So, how this applies to me, once again, I deal in horror games. They deal with very sensitive subject matters that is even a bit sensitive to adults. Let's be real here. Uh you have you have essentially like drug abuse, murder, slash killing. Let's see what else. Uh, Potentially kidnapping. Essentially all the stuff an adult would have to worry about. Visual content colors are usually generally muted in a good majority of the horror games. The few outliers like Baldi's Baldi's School and what other I guess RPG maker based horror games. Those are the outliers, but even then they are somewhat muted in color. Use of animated characters or child-oriented activities and incentives. The only animated characters I do is the player character that I control, and they are not engaged in any child activities or incentives. Kind of music and other audio content. We're in a horror game. There's obviously going to be creepy noises. Age of models. I'm safely over 18. Child celebrities or celebrities who appeal to children. I don't have any of that. Language and characteristics. Uh, depending on the depending on if it comes out of me, maybe, but definitely in the games, there will be games that go heavy on that, so that'll be a maybe. Whether advertising that promotes or appears on directed to children, I don't have ads running, and even if I were to have them on, they would not be child oriented and competent and reliable empirical evidence about age of audience. I know for a fact that my audience is at least 18. YouTube analytics at least agrees with me on that point. So, that being said, I think I might be able to continue posting videos on YouTube. Now, I will say this stipulation right now. There is no guarantee that the FTC or YouTube will keep these factors as it is. And the FTC is also currently in the middle of, I guess, processing all of this. They had workshops. I know Futuristic Hub is going up to the Hill to educate the lawmakers there about what's kid directed and like what was the term, uh attractive to kids. So that's at least that's at least how it's going down so far. There's obviously channels out there that are better at explaining COPPA, and I'll probably leave a link to some of them below. But at least in this instant, how it pertains to me, I'm more than likely able to continue posting horror videos on YouTube. Now, now with that being said, I also mentioned in the last video that I would at least start setting up Twitch. I'm still in the process of doing that, but at least now I could actually give you a link to my Twitch channel. Let me pull that up for a second. Twitch.tv. Oops. Okay. And I'll have that put in the description below. But safe to say, I'm still hammering out a few more things. Mainly streaming requirements. Well, not streaming requirements, like bitrate for my PC, and I also want to throw out the idea of if I if I were to go to Mixer, would you guys follow me there? I'm just saying that as an option because Twitch obviously isn't the only streaming platform, so I'll leave that up to you. I already have profiles set up on both sides, so I'll leave that to you. Leave a comment in the description below on if you want me to go to Twitch or Mixer. And the last thing I also want to know is that I'll not know, I'll let you know is that starting after this video when it goes up later, well pretty much later today from what time I'm at, uh there will be at least a 30-second disclaimer in front of every video before the actual intro starts. So that's essentially just to cover my own ass on if anyone were to go onto my videos and check them out. So yeah, thanks for bearing with me on talking all this, and hopefully Kappa will sort itself out so that gamers in general could continue on YouTube without any disruptions. Yeah. Here and now, here's the clip of that disclaimer I was talking about.